So one of the largest groups to combine, shall we say, the vote to no, unanimously, the fishing industry was pretty much 100% behind Brexit. Partly, a because the majority of the fishermen that are left are, shall we say, small boat fishermen. They're not these large firms that are now the dominant force of the fishing industry. These small, fishermen are no different to like a small business. And yeah, they've been dealt a bad hand, not by Europe, but by our own government, who has time and again ignored them. And even Nigel Farage, who was meant to be, and apparently still is, bizarrely, a champion to these people, and yet the opportunity he had to actually go and argue their case, he only turned up one out of 36 times. And during that meeting, said nothing. But there you go, that's Nigel Farage. And of course, we have this from The Guardian. UK fishing exports could be halted within 48 hours of a no deal. We've been saying it since the beginning. The UK fishing industry in a no deal Brexit is dead. In fact, any form of Brexit pretty much kills off the UK fishing industry. So all these people who voted because it would be better have all been lied to. And you've only got the people who told you these grand fantasies to blame. You haven't got to blame Remainers or anyone else. It's Boris Johnson, Nigel Farage, and all their other cronies that said voting leave would somehow improve your life. That's who you've got to blame. So, the UK's fishing fleets could face a de facto blockade within 84 hours of a no-deal Brexit, MPs have been told. The representatives of the fishing industry said that it was a bit of an understatement to describe that the UK's preparations for a no-deal are a shambles. Not only is the country not ready, but there are not enough vets to stamp paperwork for every boatload of fish, which would be mandatory in a no-deal scenario, MPs heard. You cannot realistically be looking at the UK fishing fleet. Certainly, the fleet that's catching exportable products tied up within 48 hours of a no deal, said Terry Portman, the marine consultant. If trucks carrying perishable goods are caught in queues at Dover, this would have a knock-on effect at the daily fish auctions, with hauliers unable to pick up loads, she said. It would not be an irony that the UK fishing fleet, who wholly, almost unanimously voted for Brexit, got tied up because the government didn't help and intervene to make sure the exports they rely on so heavily can continue, she said. The committee heard that about 50 lorries a day carry shellfish to the continent, and that a no-deal scenario they would be completely accompanied by up to 2 to 4 pieces of paperwork, including catch certificates, export health certificates, and a process statement and a storage document. The hauliers would also have to carry their own Brexit paperwork, including driver permits. This would likely cause delays, as the staff at ports would have no way of prioritising fresh food in a queue of up to 10,000 lorries a day travelling between Dover and Calais. MPs also heard that the UK lacks the army of vets and health authority officials who would needed to be at the ready to certify huge volumes of shellfish landed in Scotland or Northern Ireland for export to the continent. If you are sending fish from Northern Ireland on a land route across the shortest strait, Dover to Calais, then you have to have it signed off by a vet before you can load the lorry, and you've got anything from 24 hours plus transit time, and you might not normally be loading the lorry or selling it at 2 or 3 in the morning. You're not going to be able to get a vet with your paperwork in time to do this. The Director General of the Provision of Trade Federation, who represents the seafood sector, Andrew Kirk, said the EU is also unlikely to allow fish through without the correct paperwork, he told MPs. There is a real risk that a no-deal Brexit, where our neighbours want to be less than helpful or merely enforce their regulations, which is what they're doing. Hey, it's the law. This is what regulations do. In a competent way, our exports could be stopped overnight because the catch certificates do not comply, said Portman. All fresh produce is time sensitive. Live shellfish is the very same sensitive. Is very time sensitive. Lorry loads of lobsters when they are dead and dying is not good news, said David Jarrad, the chief executive of the Shellfish Association of Great Britain. The committee heard that while the government was indeed indicated as it has intended to train in the process of training their thousands of vets to be ready for a no deal, there is little evidence of their existence or availability at the middle of the night. In a scathing commentary on the government's planning, Portman said, if the ambition of this government throughout this process has been to create a catch certificate system that we hope that nobody really checks or gives too much scrutiny to it. To train 1,000 vets they aren't really accessible or in contract with in the industry. Then the government has to be successful in its, and the government has been successful in its planning. What can you say? What can you say? You were told, fishermen, quite succinctly, many times, that leaving the EU would be bad for you and your business. You've got no one else to blame but yourselves. You were fed lies and you believed them hook, line and sinker. And the people you need to blame are people like Nigel Farage and Boris Johnson, who led Brexit. They are the people to blame,